The cabin was supposed to be my safe place, the one thing Mom left me that no one could touch. It sat deep in the Cascades, 4 hours from Seattle, surrounded by pine trees and overlooking a crystal-clear lake. Every summer since I was 5, we had gone there as a family. Mom would teach me to fish off the dock. We would roast marshmallows by the fire. She would tell me stories about her own childhood. When she died last year, from lung cancer, she left it to me in her will, not to my father. To me, I changed every lock. I trusted no one with those keys. So when I got the call from Mr. Harrison, our neighbor who lived 2 miles down the dirt road, saying there were cars everywhere, loud music and bright lights blazing through the night, my stomach dropped. Someone had gotten inside. And I had a terrible feeling I knew exactly who had given them the key. Before I tell you what I found when I got there, let me know where you are watching from. Drop your city in the comments below. If you have ever dealt with family drama over inheritance, hit that like button. You will want to hear how this turned out. And subscribe, because what happened next, no one saw it coming. Not even the police. Now let me take you back to that phone call. My name is Edwin. I am 32 years old, an architect in Seattle, and I have spent most of my adult life building things, homes, office buildings, structures that last. I guess I got that from my mom, Margaret. She believed in creating something solid, something you could count on. The cabin was her greatest creation, not because she built it with her hands, but because she filled it with love. Every floorboard, every piece of furniture, every photograph on the wall had a story. When she was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, she made sure the cabin would stay in the family. She made sure it would stay with me. I spent her last 6 months caring for her. I took leave from work. I moved back into my childhood home. I held her hand through chemotherapy. I read to her when she was too weak to hold a book. And when she finally passed, a part of me died with her. The cabin became my sanctuary. It was the place where I could still feel her presence, where I could sit on the porch and imagine her next to me, pointing out the birds or telling me to slow down and breathe. But my father Gerald did not grieve the same way I did. He is 58, recently retired from his accounting firm, and 6 months after Mom died, he started seeing someone. Her name is Diane. She is 45, works in real estate, and has 2 sons from a previous marriage, Kyle, who just turned 21, and Brandon, who is 19. I tried to be understanding. I tried to tell myself that people grieve differently, that maybe Dad needed companionship to fill the emptiness. But it felt too soon. It felt disrespectful. And the more I got to know Diane, the more I sensed she was more interested in my father's retirement fund than in him. Things came to a head 3 months ago. Dad invited me over for dinner. Diane was there with her sons. Kyle barely looked up from his phone. Brandon made some joke about the cabin being a great party spot. I ignored it. But then, over dessert, my father cleared his throat and said he had been thinking. He said it would be nice if the cabin could be shared with his new family. He said Diane's boys could use it on weekends, that it would help everyone bond. I put my fork down. I looked him in the eye and said no. I reminded him that Mom had left the cabin to me, not to him, and certainly not to his girlfriend's kids. He got defensive. He said I was being selfish, that I was holding on to the past. I stood up and left. I drove straight to the cabin the next morning and hired a locksmith. I had every lock changed. There were only 2 sets of keys, one for me and one for Mr. Harrison, a 70-year-old man who had been friends with my grandparents and who I trusted completely. When my father found out, he was furious. He called me and demanded to know why I did not trust my own father. I told him the truth. I said I did not trust him anymore. Not with this. Not with the one thing Mom left me that meant everything. That was 2 months ago. We had not spoken much since. Until that Friday night in June. I was working late at my office in downtown Seattle, reviewing blueprints for a new residential project. My phone buzzed just after 10 p.m. It was Mr. Harrison. His voice sounded strained, worried. He said he hated to bother me, but something was not right at the cabin. He said there were 8 to 10 cars parked all over the lawn. There was a huge U-Haul truck in the driveway. Music had been blaring since 8 p.m. and when he drove by around 10, he saw a group of young people drinking beer on the porch. He said lights were on in every room, and it looked like a full-blown party. I felt my heart hammering in my chest. That was impossible. I had the only keys. But even as I said it out loud, I knew. I knew exactly what had happened. I dialed my father's number. No answer. I called again, and again, and again. On the 5th try, he finally picked up. It was 11 p.m. His voice sounded guilty before he even said hello. I did not give him a chance to ease into it. I asked him what he had done. There was a long pause. Then he admitted it. He said he had given Kyle and Brandon a spare key. He said they needed a place to celebrate Kyle's 21st birthday. He said it was just going to be a small gathering for the weekend, just a few friends. I felt rage boiling in my veins. I told him it was my cabin, that he had no right, that Mr. Harrison said there was a U-Haul there. What kind of birthday party needed a U-Haul? My father went silent. I hung up. I booked a flight immediately. The earliest one out was 5 a.m. the next morning. I threw clothes into a bag, called Mr. Harrison back to tell him I was coming, and to please not approach the group alone, and then I drove home. I did not sleep that night. I sat on my couch staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the things that could be going wrong. I thought about my mother's belongings. I thought about the furniture she had picked out. I thought about the family photos on the walls. I thought about the quilt my grandmother had made by hand, the one that always lay across the bed in the master bedroom. By the time my alarm went off at 3:30 a.m., I was already dressed and out the door. I landed just after 6:30 a.m. and drove straight to the cabin. It took 4 hours, and every mile felt longer than the last. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight, my knuckles turned white. I kept imagining the worst. But nothing I imagined could have prepared me for what I saw when I finally pulled onto the gravel driveway. Cars were everywhere. 8, maybe 10 of them parked at random angles across the lawn, some half on the grass, some blocking the driveway. A massive U-Haul truck sat in front of the garage, its back door wide open. Trash littered the yard. Beer bottles, pizza boxes, red plastic cups, crumpled napkins. One of the wooden porch chairs my grandfather had made was tipped over, and the front door of the cabin was wide open, swinging slightly in the breeze. I got out of my car slowly. The smell hit me first. Stale beer, something sour, and the faint scent of marijuana. I walked up the steps, my heart pounding, and stepped inside. The living room was a disaster. The hardwood floors were sticky with spilled alcohol. The couch my mother had chosen 15 years ago, soft fabric with a floral pattern, was covered in stains. There were cigarette burns on the armrests. The family portrait that used to hang above the fireplace had fallen. The frame was cracked, the glass shattered on the floor. On the wall, someone had drawn graffiti tags in black marker. The 65-inch television I had bought 2 years ago had a spiderweb crack across the screen, like someone had thrown something at it. The coffee table was covered in scratches and water rings, and on the floor, passed out in a sleeping bag, was a young woman I had never seen before. She had bright pink hair and smudged makeup. An empty vodka bottle lay near her feet. I moved toward the kitchen. It was worse. The sink was piled high with dirty dishes. Rotting food sat on the counters. The refrigerator door hung open, and someone had spilled milk all over the floor. Ants crawled across the tiles. The microwave door was open, and inside was the remnants of something that had exploded and never been cleaned. My stomach turned. I walked down the hall to the bedrooms. The first one I opened made my breath catch in my throat. It was my mother's room. 2 strangers were asleep on her bed, a couple I did not recognize. Her handmade quilt, the one my grandmother had stitched together over months, was crumpled on the floor, stained with something dark. The antique dresser my mother had inherited from her own mother had been forced open. The lock was broken. I pulled open the drawers. Her jewelry box was still there, but when I opened it, I realized several pieces were missing. The gold bracelet my father had given her on their 20th anniversary. The pearl earrings she wore to my college graduation. gone. My hands were shaking. Tears stung my eyes. I moved to the next bedroom. 3 people were sprawled across the bed and floor. Clothes were everywhere. The smell of sweat and alcohol was overwhelming. The third bedroom was the same 4 more people, all passed out, all strangers. I went into the bathroom. One of the tiles was cracked like someone had slammed something into it. The shower curtain was torn halfway off the rod. The toilet had not been flushed. Towels my mother had carefully folded and kept in the linen closet were thrown on the floor, stained and filthy. I descended the stairs to the basement. My father's whiskey collection bottles he had been gathering for 20 years, some worth hundreds of dollars each, was completely gone. Empty bottles were scattered everywhere. I did a quick mental calculation. Over $3,000 worth of alcohol gone. I went into the garage. My fishing rods were missing. My toolbox was gone. The kayak had deep scratches along the side. My mountain bike was nowhere to be found. I walked around to the backyard. The fire pit still had warm coals. And then I saw it. Pieces of charred wood. I knelt down and picked one up. It was part of a chair, a rocking chair. My grandfather's handmade rocking chair, the one he had built with his own hands 50 years ago. They had burned it. They had used a family heirloom as firewood. Something inside me snapped. I stormed back into the house. I went from room to room, turning on every light, yelling at the top of my lungs. Everybody up. Get out of my house. Now people stirred. Groans filled the air. Slowly confused faces appeared in doorways. A tall guy with blonde hair stumbled out of the living room, wearing only a tank top and shorts. He squinted at me. "Dude, what the hell? Who are you?" I stepped closer. "I am the owner. Who are you?" A shorter guy with a patchy beard and a backwards baseball cap came out behind him. "Oh no. Kyle, I think this is Diane's boyfriend's son." I corrected him, my voice ice cold. "Not boyfriend, my father. And this is my cabin that he had no right to give you keys to." Kyle, the tall blonde one, actually smirked. "Bro, chill. His dad said we could use it for 2 weeks. We are only 3 days in." My vision went red. 2 weeks. Brandon, the shorter one, nodded. "Yeah, man, we are celebrating Kyle's 21st. It is a milestone, you know." I looked around at the destruction. By destroying everything, by stealing, by bringing 15 people here. Kyle shrugged. "Parties happen, man. Stuff breaks. We will clean it up." I pulled out my phone. "No. You will deal with the police." More people started coming out of the bedrooms now. Some looked embarrassed. Some still looked drunk. One guy, tall and muscular with tattoos covering his arms, stepped forward. His name tag from the party said Trevor. "Yo, man, you need to relax. We are just having fun." I stood my ground. "Fun? You destroyed my family's property." Trevor took another step closer. "Look around. We outnumber you. Maybe you should leave before things get ugly." A girl with long brown hair, Kyle's girlfriend, I would later learn her name, was Ashley grabbed Trevor's arm. "Trevor, stop. This is serious." I held up my phone and started recording. "Say that again. Threaten me again. On camera." Trevor backed off, muttering under his breath. That was when I heard the sirens. 2 police cars pulled up outside. I had called them the moment I stepped into the cabin. Officer Martinez, a Latina woman in her 30s, and Officer Jensen, a white man in his 40s, stepped inside. I showed them my identification and the property deed. I explained everything. They asked Kyle and Brandon for their identification cards. Kyle tried to argue. Gerald gave us permission. "He is basically family." Officer Martinez raised an eyebrow. "Is Gerald the legal owner?" Brandon stammered. "Well, no, but..." Officer Jensen cut him off. "Then you are trespassing." Kyle's face turned red. "This is complete nonsense." Gerald said this cabin would belong to our family soon. "He promised my mom." I froze. The words echoed in my head. Promised. My father had promised my mother's cabin to Diane's family. Kyle realized he had said too much and went quiet. I felt sick. This was not just about a party. This was about my father trying to steal my inheritance and hand it to his mistress's sons. I looked at the officers. I want to press charges. Officer Martinez and Officer Jensen took control immediately. They ordered everyone to leave. All 15 people had to show identification. 3 of them were under 21 and had clearly been drinking. The officers documented it. Kyle and Brandon reluctantly started gathering their things. Their friends packed quickly, most of them looking embarrassed and scared. I followed the officers out to the U-Haul. Officer Martinez opened the back door. Inside was nearly everything: my television, my speakers, lamps from the living room, kitchen appliances, all my fishing gear. Officer Jensen turned to Brandon. "Were you planning to take all of this?" Brandon's face went pale. Trevor said, "We thought." Officer Jensen's voice was firm. "You thought you could steal. That is theft." I took photos of everything. The officers documented each item. Kyle was panicking now. "Wait, we cannot get arrested. This will ruin our records." Officer Martinez looked at him without sympathy. "You should have thought about that before. I made them unload everything. It took 2 hours. Every single item had to go back inside. I watched them carry it all sweating in the morning sun, their hangovers making them miserable. I felt no pity. Once everything was back inside, Officer Martinez sat down with me to make a full report. We went room by room: trespassing, vandalism, attempted theft, possible underage drinking, destruction of property. I documented every single piece of damage. The couch, $800. The television, $1,200. Wall repairs for the graffiti, $500. Stolen kitchen appliances, $600. My fishing gear, $400. My mother's jewelry, $1,500, though the sentimental value was immeasurable. My grandfather's rocking chair, priceless. My father's whiskey collection, $3,200. Floor repairs, $1,000. Bathroom repairs, $700. Professional deep cleaning, $500. The preliminary total came to somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000. Officer Jensen looked at me seriously. "You can press full charges. With this much damage, it is a serious case." I nodded. "I will, but first, I need to call my father." I stepped out onto the porch. The officers followed. I put the call on speaker. My father answered on the second ring. "Son, I heard the police are there." "Look, I can explain." I cut him off. "You need to get here now." His voice wavered. "I am at Diane's house. Can we talk later?" My voice was cold. "Dad, the police are here. Kyle and Brandon destroyed my cabin. They brought 15 people. They stole my things. They tried to load them into a U-Haul. They burned Grandpa's rocking chair for firewood." Silence. I continued. "And Kyle said something interesting. He said you promised this cabin to their family." My father stammered. That is not, I mean, did you promise my mother's cabin, the one she left to me, to your mistress?" He went quiet. "You have 2 choices. Come here right now and face this, or I press full criminal charges against Kyle and Brandon, and I sue you for giving them unauthorized access to my property. Son, please. You have 1 hour. Bring Diane, too. She needs to see what her precious boys did." I hung up. Officer Martinez gave me a small nod of respect. That was intense. 22 years I looked up to that man, I said quietly. Thought he was honorable. Turns out he is just weak. While I waited for my father, I made more calls. I called my lawyer, Mrs. Patricia Wong, a family friend who specialized in real estate. I explained everything. She told me I had a strong case and that she would prepare cease and desist letters immediately. I told her I wanted restraining orders. Kyle and Brandon could never come near this property again. She said it was absolutely doable. I called my insurance company and filed a claim. An agent would come the following week to assess the damage. I called my friend Jake, a contractor I had known since college. He said he would bring his crew on Monday and that they would make the place better than before. For the first time since I had arrived, I felt a sense of control returning. This was my property, my legacy. No one was going to take it from me. 3 hours later, my father's car pulled into the driveway. Diane stepped out first. She had brown hair, heavy makeup, a designer handbag, and high heels that sank into the soft dirt. She looked around at the mess and wrinkled her nose. Oh my goodness, what a disaster. My father got out next. He looked older than I, remembered tired and guilty. He walked toward me slowly. Son, I am so sorry. I had no idea. I held up my hand. Stop, just stop. I led them inside. Diane gasped when she saw the damage, but then she said something that made my blood boil. Okay, yes, it is bad. But boys will be boys, right? They just got carried away. I stared at her. Boys will be boys. They are 21 and 19. They are adults. They committed crimes. She became defensive. Crimes. That is a bit dramatic. Do you not think I showed her the photos of the stolen items in the U-Haul? Her face went pale. My father tried to mediate. Maybe we can all calm down and calm down. I turned to him. Dad, you gave them keys to my property. You violated my rights. You betrayed Mom's memory. He flinched. Kyle said you promised this cabin to their family. Is that true? My father could not look me in the eye. Diane jumped in, her voice rising. Gerald and I talked about future plans. He mentioned maybe sharing the cabin with my family if we got married. Sharing, I said. He does not own it. I do. It is my inheritance from my mother. Diane started crying, though the tears looked fake. I just wanted our boys to have nice experiences. Gerald said it would be fine. I saw right through it. Manipulation. My father looked broken. I thought. I wanted to make Diane happy. The boys needed a place for Kyle's celebration. So you stole from your own son to please your girlfriend's kids. He had no answer. I pulled out a printed document. Mrs. Wong had emailed it to me, and I had printed it at Mr. Harrison's house. Here is what is going to happen. I handed it to my father. The list was clear. Kyle and Brandon had to pay full restitution, $15,000 minimum. They had to write formal apology letters. They had to complete 100 hours of community service, each at a local youth center. They were banned from the property permanently, with restraining orders filed. They had to attend a vandalism diversion program. If they refused any of these terms, I would press full criminal charges. My father had to pay $5,000 toward repairs as an apology. He had to return all keys, even though I had already changed the locks. It was symbolic. He had to sign a notarized document acknowledging he had no rights to the cabin, and there would be no contact with me until all terms were fulfilled. Diane had to contribute $3,000 toward repairs. She had to acknowledge her son's actions in writing, and she could never contact me or come near the cabin again. My father read it, his face crumbling. Son, this is harsh. Harsh, I said. They destroyed my mother's legacy. You helped them. This is mercy. Diane's voice turned angry. We do not have that kind of money. Then your boys go to jail. Their choice. Kyle and Brandon, who had been standing in the corner, looked terrified. Brandon spoke first. We will do it. We will do it all. Please do not press charges. Kyle hesitated but finally nodded. Yeah. Okay. I gave them 48 hours to sign the agreement. Within 24 hours, every party had signed. Over the next 2 months, I watched them follow through. Kyle and Brandon completed their community service hours. I verified it with the youth center director. Their apology letters arrived half-hearted but legally compliant. My father paid his $5,000. Diane paid her $3,000. My insurance covered $8,000. The total came to $16,000 for repairs. Jake and his crew finished the work. The cabin looked better than it had in years. Fresh paint, new floors in some areas, new furniture. I installed a security system, cameras, alarms, motion sensors. I changed all the locks again. Mr. Harrison kept the only spare key. Restraining orders were granted. Kyle and Brandon could not come within 1,000 feet of the cabin. If they did, they would be arrested immediately. I did not press criminal charges per our agreement. My father and I had no contact for 2 months. When I returned to Seattle, I was emotionally exhausted, but I was victorious. I had stood up to my father. I had protected what my mother left me. And for the first time since she died, I felt like I had honored her memory the right way, by refusing to let anyone take what was ours. October came 3 months after everything happened. I took a week off work and drove back to the cabin. It was my first time there since the repairs had been finished. Autumn in the Cascades was breathtaking. The leaves had turned gold and red. The air was crisp and clean. The lake was calm, reflecting the sky like glass. The cabin looked beautiful. Fresh beige paint, my mother's favorite color, covered the exterior. New porch furniture sat arranged just the way she used to have it. The security cameras were discreet, but visible enough to deter anyone with bad intentions. The garden had been cleaned up and flowers had been planted along the walkway. I walked through slowly. Everything was clean and organized. The new couch was similar in style to my mother's. The photos had been reframed and rehung on the walls. It felt both familiar and new at the same time. I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee looking out at the lake. For the first time in over a year, I felt peace. Tears came, but they were different this time. Not grief, not anger, just release. Just acceptance. My father had called several times over the past few weeks. At first I had not answered, but 3 weeks ago I finally picked up. He told me he was sorry. He said he had been weak, that Diane had manipulated him, that he saw it now. I asked him a question that had been burning inside me. Did she manipulate you, or did you choose her over me? He was silent. Then he admitted something I had not expected. I wanted to feel young again. Wanted. Diane made me feel important. And I did not. Another pause. You reminded me of your mother. It hurt to look at you. In that moment I understood. My father had not run toward love. He had run away from grief. That did not excuse what he had done, but it explained it. I learned recently that my father and Diane had broken up. She had moved to a different state with her sons. My father was alone now, realizing what he had lost. He wanted to rebuild our relationship. I was not ready to forgive him fully. But I was willing to talk. I set boundaries: lunch once a month at a neutral location. He would never get a key to the cabin again. Trust had to be rebuilt slowly. I made a decision about the cabin. I would spend more time there. I started working remotely 2 weeks every month. I invited close friends to visit, not family, but people I trusted. My college roommate Sam and his wife came up. My colleague Maria brought her kids. They respected the space. They helped with yard work. We cooked together. The cabin felt alive again, filled with the right kind of energy. I also started a journal. I wrote about my mother, about our memories together. I planted a Japanese maple tree in the backyard, her favorite. I created a photo album documenting the cabin through the years. I felt her presence, but in a comforting way now, not a painful one. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Kyle graduated from college and was working an entry-level job. Brandon was still in school, apparently more serious now. Both had completed their community service. There was a rumor that they had apologized to my father for getting him in trouble. It seemed they had learned something about consequences. I felt no satisfaction and no bitterness when I heard this. Just indifference. They were part of a past I had moved beyond. Sitting on that porch in October, I reflected on everything I had learned. Boundaries are sacred. Even with family, you have the right to protect what is yours. Saying no is not selfish. It is self-respect. My mother taught me to be kind, but she also taught me to be strong. I learned that grief makes people do strange things. My father's betrayal came from running away from pain. It did not excuse his actions, but it helped me understand them. I learned to face grief head-on instead of running from it. I realized that legacy is more than property. The cabin was wood and walls, yes, but it represented my mother's love, her values, her memories. Protecting it meant protecting her. That was worth fighting for. I understood that forgiveness does not mean forgetting. I might forgive my father someday, but trust has to be earned back. A healthy relationship needs boundaries. And I learned that standing up for yourself is growth. The old version of me might have stayed quiet to keep the peace, but the new version understood that some battles must be fought. Not with anger, but with clarity and strength. As the sun set that evening, I sat on the porch with my coffee in hand. The lake reflected shades of orange and pink. I thought about my mother. I whispered into the quiet evening air, "I did it, Mom. I protected what you left me, not just the cabin, but the lesson, that some things are worth fighting for. Some battles are not about winning. They are about protecting what matters. And that cabin, it was not just wood and walls. It was my mother's love turned into a place where I could always come home. Sometimes the hardest person to stand up to is family. But when you do it right, you do not just save a place, you save yourself. And that is a lesson worth learning no matter how much it costs. Have you ever had to stand up to family to protect something important to you? Drop your story in the comments. I would love to hear it. If this story resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about family boundaries and finding your strength. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it is okay to fight for what is yours. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that protecting your peace is never selfish. It is survival. Take care of yourselves out there, and remember, some legacies are worth defending.